Good evening, everyone. Welcome everybody to Monday, October 9th's work session of the York County School Board. As you can see, Mrs. Haywood is not sitting with us. She is traveling right now. She'll be back soon, but she will get caught up and updated when she gets back. We have really just 5 really great presentations this evening, but before we jump into that, one of our board members would like to share something. So, Mr. Richardson, you want to go ahead and...
Mr. Chair, thank you. Our last meeting, I neglected to mention something in my comments at the end of the meeting about how proud I am of our teachers and our principals. There was a really nice article that was written last month by Josh Reyes. You're here today. Thank you for that article. Really nice article about our division having a 90% pass rate in the 3rd grade throughout the entire division. And from what I understand, I think that's the best in the region, even around here, which is very impressive. Very well written article. But then again, this month, there was an editorial that again touted the same thing, but it also discussed how we achieved that rating and that the teachers were trying to come up with creative ways to bring our reading scores up, that they identified that reading and writing and writing and reading, they all work well together. So they were allowing the kids to pick their own topics to write about instead of picking it out of a textbook or through a curriculum. So there was a varied range of topics that they were writing on, but obviously it worked, as it shows in our SOL score. So again, I want to thank our teachers for that well-deserved kudos and great work. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Thank you. All right, so let's jump right into our presentations this evening. Mr. Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you for the marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Medford. Board members, good evening. We have 5 presentations this evening. Our first presentation, I'm going to ask Ms. Cheryl Parr if she'll please come to the podium. She's our Associate Director of School Administration, and she's going to present information regarding updates to the Health Services Manual, which is the school division's guiding document for school nurses.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Good evening, Mr. Medford and members of the board. Tonight, I will present the proposed changes to the YCSD Health Services Manual. This manual is provided to each school nurse in the division as a guidebook to ensure consistency with health services for our students. The handbook revisions are recommendations from school nurses and the YCSD Student Health Advisory Board. The board is comprised of a school board representative, a school nurse, parents, administrators, an athletic director, and a private sector health services provider. The purpose page of the manual states it will be reviewed annually and updated as necessary. The document you have before you lists all additions and deletions that have been made and includes a copy of each page where changes are recommended. As I provide a visual summary of the suggested changes, you will see that additions are in red and underlined and deletions are lined through, matching the documents before you. This slide shows part of the list of personnel duties for our nurses. The changes you see have been recommended for clarity purposes. Although our nurses assist with coordinating outside care for students, they do not make final arrangements for outside care. Licensure information has been added to the requirement of CPR and first aid certifications, so all certification information is together. The next several slides show improvements to the list of suggested duties for the month of August. Review of the Health Services Manual is a year-round activity, so this task has been added to that section in the manual. Since the time the manual was first developed, we have modified some of the processes our nurses support, such as the annual health update cards, Safe Schools training, and medical documentation records. The changes that you see here reflect those modifications. This list shows additional duties our nurses are now responsible for in August before school begins each year. They must approve immunization records for students that are new and provide training to staff for medication administration and EpiPen support. The language on this slide clarifies that nurses will work closely with administrators to provide information to our school staffs about building procedures for health services, and that nurses will coordinate crisis plans with administrators. At the beginning of each year, nurses receive annual health update cards from parents and use that information to prepare confidential health advisory lists. This information is communicated as needed with specific teachers and administrators. The language in the manual has been reflected to document our current practices. The last bulleted item has been moved to the list of year-round tasks because nurses notify teachers of school health concerns and necessary procedures all throughout the school year. Additional duties completed by our school nurses in September include awareness of any health services forms updates, monitoring that all annual health update cards have been received, and updating student records in our management system. On this slide, you see additional items that are actually year-round duties. In the manual, these have been moved from the September list of tasks to the year-round duties section. For the month of October, this slide provides clarity to the process of continued notification to teachers and staff regarding students with health needs. Again, this is a year-round activity and is now listed in that section of the manual. As previously mentioned, the reference for staff participation in bloodborne pathogen online training is out of date and has been replaced with Safe Schools online training. Also, YCSD nurses no longer give staff notification about flu vaccines, as this information is provided to staffs by our Human Resources Department. Continuing with updates to the list of monthly activities, this slide shows the task of completing an end-of-year report for EpiPen usage has been added to the Health Services Manual, along with the task of disposing leftover medication and hazardous waste at the end of each year. This is now completed with our occupational safety and regulatory compliance specialist. The next two slides show the activities that have been added to the ongoing list of duties that nurses complete throughout the year. Each of these was previously referenced in the manual as taking place at the beginning of the year only. Locating this information in this section of the manual illustrates the current practices of our school nurses. The tasks on this slide also are completed throughout the year, so their location in the manual has been adjusted to the year-round section as well. Please note that maintenance for the log of student clinic visits is not completed on an individual record, but through an electronic system for logging information for all students who visit the clinic on a daily basis, which is why the recommendation is made for removing the word individual in the second bullet. Each of our clinics has a specific inventory of items needed for appropriate student care. Bed linens, medicine droppers, and sterile gauze are no longer a part of the inventory because they're no longer used. Gauze pads have replaced gauze rolls, and lenses for Snellen charts are no longer required. One of the most important responsibilities our nurses have is monitoring immunization requirements. The language that you see on this slide clarifies the current requirements for the state of Virginia regarding the Tdap booster. Section 5 of the Health Services Manual provides guidelines for the student screening process. This slide shows the removal of outdated information for hearing screenings. Hearing screenings continue to take place, however, results are kept with clinic records unless part of academic evaluation information. An additional change to the Health Services Manual is for clarity with information about scoliosis screenings. Students in grades 5, 7, and 9 receive educational materials with the option to screen for scoliosis with parent permission. Parents are notified about screening results if necessary. Section 6 of the manual refers to records and reports. The following information is editorial in nature, clarifying the name of the annual health update form. New entry screenings are primarily for students in kindergarten through 5th grade, and this reference has been added to the manual. Another responsibility for school nurses is the completion of annual reports that must be prepared with data information for the state. An annual report for occupational injuries is no longer required for nurses to complete, so this language has been removed. Elementary and middle school nurses submit yearly immunization status reports as requested by the Virginia Department of Health. This manual update reflects that nurses individually submit the information for their schools instead of it being submitted by the division. On page 7.1 of the manual, language has been added to include the state requirement for each school to have EpiPens available in the event of an unexpected anaphylactic reaction that may occur. At times, particularly in elementary schools, nurses follow procedures for suspected head lice. Changes made to the manual once again reflect current practice and guidelines for all health professionals, not just our school nurses. Nurses are not required to check every student in a classroom when one student is confirmed to have a case of lice. Parents are also not required to provide proof of treatment when a student returns. However, all students sent home for confirmed cases of lice will be rechecked by our nurses when they return to determine if they may remain in the school setting. Procedures for suspected lice also include guidelines to ensure reinfestation does not occur. Guidelines are clarified for the steps schools should take when more than 2 students in a classroom have confirmed cases or more than 2 classrooms have confirmed cases. These may be evaluated on a case-by-case situation with administrator approval, dependent on the students who are affected. These recommendations that you see here, previously included in the manual, have been removed because they are no longer recommended by the Virginia Department of Health. We also no longer use these practices in our current procedures in our clinics. Previously, this manual contained copies of policy and superintendent's regulations. Replacing these with live links in an online version of the manual allows nurses the ability to access information quickly. The manual also previously contained copies of forms and letters. By replacing these with live links in an online version of the manual as well, nurses are able to access fillable forms for easier use. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information regarding revisions to our health services manual. These changes will allow our nurses to continue providing excellent care for our students and our school staffs. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Question. Just a couple things, Cheryl. Bloodborne pathogens, that's replaced by Safe Schools training, you said?
And the Safe Schools training includes that information in that.
Same information, just,
Yes, in a different location. It's no longer a separate thing. It's a part of all of the school safety training that our school staffs take, including our nurses.
okay, good, thank you. The other two have to do with, first, food allergies. We all know that's huge, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. That information, walk me through that if you can. Like when the child comes in, they first contact the nurse or the principal to let them know the food allergies. How does that happen?
When they are first starting the school
Yeah,
year, when
right.
they're first becoming a student in the school,
Right,
yes, we ask for
exactly.
our parents to please
Or
give
whenever
us
they
the
find out they have a food
information.
allergy?
Yes,
So
yes.
all right, and that's stored in the nurse's office or the principal's office? I mean, which?
The information or
Yeah.
any medication?
Well, the information, just the fact that, how are they flagged? That's flagged through the nurse's office?
We rely on our parents to give us the information first, and then, yes, we ensure, of course, that our nurses have that information so they can be aware. And then what nurses do, similar to what was stated for other things that may occur, the nurses then give the information to all of the stakeholders. It may be a teacher, but it may also be
Okay.
a bus driver.
Okay.
And so we work with whomever is going to be in contact with that child to know exactly what they need to do for that student.
So that does
due
get
to the
passed
allergy.
on. That's
Some
great.
of them post on their outside of their doors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Last question, EpiPens. How many do we have now? I remember when we started talking about this, there were very few in each school, but what?
We have an additional one, or I guess an extra one, in each school in the event of an emergency for any student or any staff member. That is now a state requirement, and we comply with that by having a set in every building that can be used for any reason, for anyone, regardless of whether they have an EpiPen of their own at the school site.
So you have 2 per school, regardless of the
Absolutely.
size of the school. That's for elementary and high school, I
That's
guess?
for every building location. We have one at the school board office. We have them at every location in the event that it may be needed.
Can you tell me a little bit about who's trained to use these? There's not much training for them, but
Exactly.
who knows how to use these at the schools?
So our nurses work with our school staffs to first make sure that anyone who has a student who has an EpiPen is trained to use that for that particular student. And then they give global training for all of our school staffs about what they would do in the event that a reaction may occur that no one would know about, but that someone would be able to respond to. Then there are specific persons at each school that work closely with the nurse to have some additional training to have some further information about it to be able to use it.
There are multiple people in the school that can do this. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, any other questions? Great presentation as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Parr.
All right, next.
All right, our next presentation, I'm going to ask Dr. Tony Vladu, Director of Secondary Instruction, to come to the podium. He's going to present an update related to 2 objectives under Goal 2 of the strategic plan. Dr. Vladu.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Medford, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor. During the September work session, I provided you with an update on several objectives under Goal 1. Tonight, I'll provide you with an update on 2 objectives under Goal 2. Goal 2 of the strategic plan states that the York County School Division will engage all students in rigorous educational experiences. The first objective I will address under Goal 2 tonight relates to career and technical certificates, state licenses, and national occupational assessment credentials. The blue bars on this graph represent annual targets, while the green bars indicate our performance. As you can see, the percentage of seniors earning at least 1 credential has greatly increased since we began to report our progress on this goal back in FY14. As it relates to last year's performance, tonight I'm pleased to report that the percentage of all 2017 graduating seniors earning at least 1 credential increased from 77 to 92%. This level of growth represents 87 additional graduates, or a 15 percentage point increase over the previous year. As you may remember, during last year's presentation, I stated that moving forward, all standard diploma students will be required to earn an industry credential in order to graduate. Tonight, I'm proud to report that this past year, all standard diploma students and their teachers stepped up to this challenge and met this important requirement. We have come a long way since FY13, and our students and teachers have more than exceeded the FY17 benchmark 1 year ahead of schedule. Over the next 2 slides, I'll provide more information on the breakdown of credentials our students earned. While the previous slide showed our strategic goal performance, the pie graph you are now seeing shows the distribution of credentials earned. This past June, 92% of York County School Division graduates earned a total of 1,674 credentials. As seen by the area in blue, 29% of graduates earned 1 credential. The area in green shows that almost half of all graduates have at least 2 credentials. Lastly, approximately 14% of graduates, represented by the area in purple, earned 3 or more industry credentials. Now I would like to review the credentials earned by type. Out of the 1,674 credentials earned by the class of 2017, 58 or 3.5% are represented by National Occupational Competency Test or NOCTI credentials. Some examples of these credentials are medical assistance, computer networking, and animal science. The majority of these certifications were earned at the New Horizons Regional Education Center. Additionally, the 18 state licenses our students earned in New Horizons were in areas such as health sciences, pharmacy, barbering, and cosmetology. More than half of the credentials earned fell into the industry certification category. The financial literacy demonstrated by performance on the WISE test accounted for 80% of industry certifications on this chart. The remainder consisted of automotive repair or ASC certifications, digital media, and graphic design. The last category, or approximately 39% of all certifications, were in the area of workplace readiness skills. As a reminder, moving forward, we will report progress on the new strategic objectives developed this past spring that are related to career awareness, mentorships and internships, as well as authentic opportunities for students to demonstrate workplace readiness skills. As we look at our progress on this goal over the past 4 years, we have more than exceeded performance due to 3 factors. First, as stated, beginning with this past year's graduates, all students on the standard diploma were required to earn a CTA credential in order to graduate. Second, all of the students enrolled in economics and personal finance are provided with the opportunity to take both the workplace readiness skills test as well as the WISE financial literacy test. Lastly, we're seeing a small increase in the number of national occupational competency tests. We could not be more proud of our students, staff, and the support of parents for exceeding this goal. As we celebrate our growth, we're excited by the direction of the new objectives under the new strategic plan, and we'll look forward to this important work. The final objective I will address tonight under Goal 2 relates to the integration of online learning and face-to-face instruction within the same course. Blended learning provides opportunities for both teachers and students to extend learning beyond the classroom and outside of the school day. Some sample assignments may include posting or responding to discussion forums, using online classroom resources, or meeting the teacher in a live homework help session. As we look at our last chart, the blue bars represent annual targets, while the green bars represent performance on this goal. For FY16, the percentage of secondary teachers integrating online learning was 64%. This past school year, however, we saw an increase of 11 percentage points for a total of 75% of teachers that integrated online learning within the same face-to-face course. We're pleased to see the integration of blended learning into traditional face-to-face classes, and our teachers and school staff are to be commended for growth on this objective. At this time, I would like to attribute our growth to several factors. Beginning in FY15, middle school students enrolled in high school credit-bearing courses completed 8 hours of blended learning. Over the past 2 years, blended learning has extended to grade 7 and grade 8 math, English, science, and social studies classes. Our schools also included the implementation of blended learning in the school improvement plans. School leaders deliberately promoted the incorporation of virtual and blended learning at their schools as a sound instructional practice that maximizes student learning in all subject areas. As such, this practice is expected to continue. Lastly, since FY14, our teachers have a better understanding of the definition and the application of blended learning. By measuring and supporting growth on this objective, our teachers increasingly extend learning for students beyond the four walls of the classrooms by incorporating effective online learning strategies. So as I conclude this update, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the work of teachers, students, and their families. At this time, I'm open for your questions and comments.
One quick question. On your certifications, who certifies the workplace readiness? What organization does that?
Those competencies are developed by the state, and the test is provided by the Virginia Department of Education for the workplace readiness skills.
So this is a state certification, I guess is the way to describe it.
Well, they're developed by the Virginia Department of Education in collaboration with employers throughout Virginia years ago. And there's delivered online through some modules where our teachers log in, they take that test, and the data is provided back to the schools.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is who or what organization actually says, yes, indeed, this is the criteria that they must meet for purposes of workplace readiness. Makes sense?
Yeah, it is an external organization. I'll have to provide you the name of that
Okay,
organization.
yeah,
Yes.
that's fine, you can do that later. I was just curious as to know who's doing that. I didn't know if that was through one of these other organizations or state or just who was providing it, but thank you.
Yeah, a lot of these are on, like the WISE test by outside agencies that
Yeah.
work in collaboration with us, and we test them through our product.
Two quick questions, and that is, right, some of these courses the students are taking, they get a certification because they're taking the financial literacy course, and they take that state test or national test. Are there certifications that students will sit for, not because they're really taking a course, but they take a course of study and they're going in a direction that they want, but they're not really taking one course that offers the test, it's just a offering that's out there for them to take?
There are, I know that other than economics and personal finance, which account for most of the certification you looked at, I know that some of our schools incorporate Adobe products such as InDesign. We're also looking at Microsoft products, which are Excel, PowerPoint. Some of the more technical aspects such as welding and ASC certified mechanic steering, those kind of things, a lot of those are at New Horizons. So there are courses that deliver that as part of everyone's experience, which is economics and personal finance, and there are other more specific areas that kids sign up for, students sign up for to take through specialized classes.
So if they could go to guidance, and guidance could provide them a list of certifications that they may choose from that they learned or understood or wanted to participate and get a certification in, other than the teacher class in the classroom.
So once they have a career interest, they'll select courses that speak to that career interest, and those CTE courses come along with opportunity to earn a certification.
And then going on to blended learning, are we starting to have conversations with our students as they graduate that this blended learning concept is actually really preparing students for that college entry, where they're doing a lot of online components at that level, because we're whetting the appetite basically, or giving them some skill sets. Are we getting feedback that is really a positive direction for them?
We don't have specific feedback, whether that's from the end user, but we do know that colleges, for instance, my own students took courses in college. They were put in a lab with 400 or 500 others, and they're expected to do this course online. So what we're doing, we're presenting students with experiences to get them ready for that beginning in middle school. And our numbers are growing. We're increasing not only in the usage by teachers, but also in the virtual course offerings and virtual Virginia.
I'd love to be able to capture information after students graduate that, to go back and say, hey, that our blended learning modules and components help you in college or career, wherever life took you, basically. So, all right, fantastic presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Medford, I was just going to share, we also have a large number of students that take virtual classes as well. So I think that would also be a component that would help support them as they move forward. But I think it's data we can collect.
And we'll gather that question for you, Mr. Vivian, as well, the answer to that question.
All right, so number three.
Number three, all right. So I'm going to ask Mr. Mark Shearhart if he'll please come to the podium. He is up next, and he's going to be presenting with Dr. James. Or Dr. James is going to be presenting with Mark Shearhart related to our 6-year facilities master plan. So I'll turn it over to Dr. James.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Mr. Medford, members of the board. This evening, Mr. Shearhart and I, the Associate Director of Capital Plans and Projects, will share an overview for you of the 6-year facilities master plan. In past years, the facility master plan encompassed 10 years, but now it covers 6 years, so it's in coordination with the county's plan for development of the capital improvement program. So the 6-year master plan, what does it do? It provides background information and historical information about our school facilities. It presents enrollment and capacity data, and addresses or make recommendations for expanded or new facilities and the major maintenance of existing facilities. Mr. Dolak and his team will do routine maintenance, but the major maintenance is, of course, done through the facilities master plan and accordingly through the capital improvement program. And it also recommends, as I just discussed, any capital projects or capital maintenance projects that will be included in the capital improvement program. And Mr. Bill Bowen, our Chief Financial Officer, will present to you next month the capital improvement program, which will follow the facilities master plan. One factor that's really impacting the school division now is the construction of new residential developments. And the greatest impact here, I feel, will be felt initially at the elementary level, and in subsequent years it will move forward to the middle and high schools. But now, there's some of our elementary schools, there's no new construction, residential construction planned for those attendance zones, and that would be, of course, the Bethel Manor attendance zone, Coventry, Dare, and Tab Elementary zones. On the next 6 slides, I will share you information about projected enrollment and the new development in each of our elementary zones to give you some idea about the number of students we should expect. These are projected numbers,
And there's no telling when all of these students, if the projections hold true, will appear in our schools, because this is going to be based on the pace of development in some cases, and then approval of the plans as presented by county staff. So the first slide looks at four schools rather. That would be Graff and Bethel. You can see here we have 90 students planned for Graff and Bethel. I can tell you, as we may have discussed last year, in Commonwealth Green, that development is still under construction. All of the apartments are complete. The estimate here was 75 students. We have 30-some elementary students from that development now. So sometimes these projections hold true, and sometimes they don't. As you may remember, in Yorktown Arts, we see the opposite of what we see here at Commonwealth Green. Magruder, of course, 178 students when all those developments come online. You can see only one is active now, that's Whitaker's Mill. Mount Vernon, the Smith Farm subdivision. Received some information a couple of weeks ago that this month they're going to go back before the Planning Commission because they refined the application. They have submitted it again, so it'll go back through the process in October. And of course, Seaford, you see two developments. The Crescent, you may remember a couple of years ago, we moved the Crescent from Yorktown Elementary Zone to the Seaford Zone. And you can see here, 32 students are projected from that development. Osborne Land is a very small development there on Seaford Road, and it's expect only 5 elementary students because of the number of homes that are going to be there. Continue with the elementary schools. Waller Mill, you see 209 students. As you know, we increased the size of that school. We completed that renovation addition last year. But these developments, if it holds true, that will have 209 more students that would attend at some point in time Waller Mill Elementary School. Burgess Quarters, that's active, of course. The reserve is active, and additional apartments are planned for the reserve in addition to the single-family homes that are already completed and the condominium or townhomes that are currently under construction. And we have students from part of that area already, but there are other apartments coming in there. And you can see at Yorktown Arts, I mentioned that briefly, the number of students we expect at Yorktown Elementary, 113. Should this projection or these projections hold true? Nelson's Grant, you know, is still under construction. Yorktown Arts is complete. And of course, we got more students than, and these are just the county developers, the county planners numbers. You can see we got far more students from Yorktown Arts than the 17 that you see here. Rose Hill, I don't know when construction is going to start, but if you ever drive on Crawford Road, you'll see that an entrance has been developed through the National Park Service property. They got an easement to develop an entrance to Rose Hill whenever that starts. You ever drive that road, you'll see that happening there now. I'll move on to middle schools. Grafton Middle, you see the two developments there, the number of students projected at middle school. You can see the middle school students are going to be less from each development than we saw at the elementary. But you see 40 students there at Queens Lake. That's quite a number. Once all those homes are developed, according to the projections, we should expect at some point in time 192 students. And you can see the ones that are active, which I share with you for the elementary schools. Continue with the middle schools, Tab Middle and Yorktown Middle. You can see Tab Middle, 14, York Middle, 76. That's based on the number of developments that we have in particular school zones. I'll now move on to the high schools. Bruton High School, with all of those developments, it'll be 239 students in the high school according to projections. Then at Grafton High School, we expect 49. Concluding the high schools, Tab High School, Smith Farms, 20, and then York High School, 101 additional students. Another important part of the work we do is define schools by capacity. On this slide, you'll see some terms. Building capacity, that's based on how many students can effectively receive instruction in the school based on X number of students per classroom. That's a static number. It only changes if we add additional rooms to a school or, of course, renovate a school and subtract the number of classrooms. Now, the other one is especially important at the elementary school, and that would be the instructional capacity. Instructional capacity has been done to reflect what happens when classrooms are going to be used for programs that are not K-5 classrooms. And these include, in our various schools, would be art, computer labs, Dance, we're at Waller Mill. Drama, limited English proficiency, math resource, pre-K or pre-kindergarten, reading, science resource, and special education. Because this is based on instructional programming, the instructional capacity for a school could change each year based on the programming that's in that school during that particular fiscal year. So in each year, the instructional capacity is going to be recalculated, and I work with Dr. Guy very closely to let me know about the instructional programming in that school, so then I can subsequently determine the building capacity. And that's the process you see here. When you look at this slide, you also see enrollment data based on end of September, as well as enrollment data that includes pre-K. You'll also see that I have 3 figures that are highlighted in red. That simply means that the current enrollment is greater than the instructional capacity. There are no red numbers in the pre-K enrollment because pre-K classrooms are already deducted before the instructional capacity is calculated. That's why you don't see a deduction in the column for pre-K enrollment, because those classrooms are already deducted to derive the instructional capacity. Middle schools, the middle schools is quite different. This slide here reflects the instructional capacities. However, for a middle school and a high school, or all of the secondary schools, it's the same, because we don't deduct classrooms for the other areas I just talked about, because for an art room, students that take art just rotate in the art room and back to their regular schedules. That is used for instruction all day, where in elementary school, that classroom is only used for just that particular subject. So that's why you see the difference here for middle schools, and you'll also see the same thing here for high schools. I can tell you none of our middle schools or high schools exceed the building's capacity or instructional capacity. So with the numbers I showed you earlier, I feel at this point, our schools will be in great shape, except for Queens Lake, and Mr. Shearhart will share with you later on about an addition that's proposed for Queens Lake because of those numbers you saw previously. So moving forward, in the FMP, I'll look at the data I just shared about schools being beyond instructional capacity, and then develop strategies to address enrollment that's beyond the instructional capacity. So as you can see here, 3 schools, Bethel Manor, Grafton Bethel, and Yorktown, those are the schools that have enrollment greater than the instructional capacity. You can see Waller Mill and Magruder are also listed on this slide. Because of new developments, sooner or later, enrollment in that school is going to be beyond or greater than the instructional capacity. So we need to have a strategy in place to address that. Last year when I spoke to you, Magruder would have been included. It was included in schools that was beyond the instructional capacity. As far as enrollment is concerned, it's not there this year because a pre-K classroom was moved from Magruder to Waller Mill. So when that happens, the net effect would be it would increase the instructional capacity at Magruder. And likewise, it would decrease the instructional capacity at Waller Mill because you have a dedicated classroom for that program that could not be used for K-5 instruction. So what are the recommendations? At Grafton Bethel, as we know, it exceeds the school's instructional capacity. So the recommendation is to review the enrollment data and balance enrollment at elementary schools accordingly. As you know, last week we started an elementary attendance zones balancing committee. And part of the work of that committee is to look at the data I just shared with you, and I shared some of that with them last week, and we'll share more this week to see what's the best way to work through schools that have enrollment beyond the instructional capacity, while also taking into account those new developments and the timing of those developments as much as we can tell, so we don't get into a situation with the recommendations that we would move students from a school to another school in a couple of years then move them back. So the task we have before us is to make sure we consider all factors of that attendance balancing committee to make sure we do the best we possibly can for our families as far as concerns from moving from one school to another and back. At Magruder, you'll see the same thing, but with Magruder, we have another caveat beyond balancing enrollment accordingly. Let's look at the construction of a new elementary school. And we've talked about that many times before about what to do as enrollment increases in those schools. Waller Mill here, same recommendations. Balanced enrollment or consider a new elementary school. York Elementary, you'll have the same set of recommendations for how we address increasing enrollment at those schools. So with that in mind, have any questions for me before Mr. Shearhart walks you through an additional part of the facilities master plan?
Question? Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Medford, members of the board, Dr. Shandor, I'll continue on with the presentation here. So deferred maintenance is normal building maintenance that is funded through the operating budget. Normal building maintenance is funded by general operating budget each fiscal year. So maintenance that must be delayed to physical constraints or other reasons is called deferred maintenance. So maintenance projects that are determined by maintenance projects are determined by an annual assessment of each building's physical status. And we tour each of the schools each year, go through every single classroom, open every door, and look inside to see what the status is of all these buildings. Deferred maintenance projects are in excess of $30,000 are funded through the CIP. So some of our capital maintenance projects. The FY19 Facilities Master Plan includes the following types of projects. Safety and security enhancements. These include security vestibules and enclosing the breezeways, renovations and additions, HVAC and energy management system replacements, roof repair and replacement, window and door replacement, and various other projects. We've arranged these in the FMP according to the school type and alphabetically now to make it easier to find the projects. So we've done them by elementary schools, middle schools, Grafton Middle and high school, various high schools and various other projects. So the projects are entered into the spreadsheet based on safety and security concerns, age of the facility and various components, condition of the facility and components, and available funding. So the first part of this, I'd like to touch on the elementary schools. I know this is small, but bear with me. You've got it in your board docs also, so you can see it easier. So there are different color fonts on here, and the different color fonts mean different things. So the purple font indicates new projects or a change in funding level. The red strike-throughs indicate projects that were moved, changed, or deleted, and green font indicates projects that were typically moved forward. There are a few that were moved back. And also lastly, we have an asterisk here indicating some funding we received from the county or expect to receive from the county for one project. So I'd like to go down this line by line and just explain where we're at here. So the first project is Bethel Manor Elementary School. You see there in FY23, we have inserted it. This is replacing the heating and air conditioning in the 100 and 200 wings. We've just completed the 300 and 400 wings at that school, but these 100 and 200 wings will be at end of life for the heat pumps that are there by FY23. The reason it's in purple here is because typically our new projects are inserted in the out year of FY24. So because it was inserted before FY24 is the reason it's in purple. Now, a lot of changes here, a lot of proposed changes here are for Coventry Elementary School. And this is the plan there was to replace the windows and to create a security vestibule there. That's the second line. And you can see we're recommending that we reduce the funding there to $175,000. And then we move $200,000 to replacing the roof at Tabb Middle School. The shingled roof at Tabb Middle School is failing prematurely. We did not expect it. And we're recommending moving some of these funds to the Tabb Middle School roof. Coventry's roof is fine. It's not fine. They have some leaks, but it's not near what's happening at Tabb Middle School. So Coventry, the third line down, Coventry Elementary metal roof replacement. We're recommending moving that $1.2 million from Coventry to Tabb Middle School. And then the fourth line down, Coventry Elementary replacing the classroom conditions HVAC. The heating and air conditioning is running there currently. It's fine. It's all working. And we recommend moving that money, the $700,000, to Tabb Middle School for their roof replacement. This is $1.2 million we're recommending to move from Coventry to Tabb Middle School. It will still allow, because we left $175,000 in that second line there, it will still allow us to do the security vestibule and some other work around that building, hopefully do some window replacements there while we're in there replacing that, building the security vestibule. If you move down there to Dare Elementary School, you see expanding the parking lot was originally in FY20, and you see we've recommended moving that forward to FY19. And then one of the reasons we can move some of these projects forward to FY19 is because we're recommending moving the construction of the school back 1 year, so that gives us some freedom here in FY19 for us to do some work in FY19. You see the next project down there is the gym HVAC replacement at Dare. That's the original equipment in there, and it is nearing end of life, so that needs to be changed out soon, and we're recommending moving that forward. The next project down, the last one there, is replacing the gym floor at Dare Elementary School. That gym floor, the plans in most of our schools, to elementary schools, to replace it with a rubber-backed floor in the gyms to give cushion for the children's knees. But that floor that we have in there, skate, rattle, and roll, cannot use that floor, that typical floor. So the best solution for that floor is to replace it with a wood floor. And the county is, I believe the county is, we're expecting the county to provide the funding to go ahead and replace that with a wood floor in Dare Elementary School, because they're the ones that are using it the most for skate, rattle, and roll, Parks and Rec. And so we're expecting them to replace that floor. So we want to move that money from Dare Elementary to Mount Vernon to go ahead and replace the floor at that gymnasium. Do you have any questions on that page? I know I went through a lot.
Just one quick question. I know we have different roofs on all these buildings because of the way they were designed architecturally. Is there any advantage to when we're replacing these roofs to put maybe a metal roof on all roofs, or make them all flat, or make them all shingled, or that'll last longer, or the best roof, or?
It's a menagerie of different types of roofs that we have to use, and part of it's the width of the building. It determines a lot and what kind of roof we can put on there. The metal roofs have positives and negatives just as well as all the other roofs do. I think right now the best money is on the low slope roofs that we have, is coating them like we've been doing. I think that's the best solution there. The tile roof at Queens Lake is working fine. We're not having issues there. We're having issues with the one at Tabb Middle School. Again, that was unexpected.
Right.
But due to some of the investigation by our roofing consultant, he recommends we go back, not with a shingle roof there, but going back with a metal roof there. And you'll see further on down when I get to Tabb Middle School, you can see the cost increase there, and that's because we're going from replacing a shingle roof to going up into a metal roof on it.
You're obviously on top of it, so thank you.
We're trying to, sir.
Good job. Good job. No pun.
Okay, so the next page there, we have,
Next slide.
the next slide is you see Dare Elementary at the top there, coating the low slope roof there. Again, just as I mentioned, coating that roof, trying to make that roof last another 20 years. So we're recommending moving that forward. We want to get it coated as soon as possible to make it last. The next one down there, Magruder Elementary, expanding the parking lot there. The plan now is to find a location to park the buses that are currently parked at Magruder, either lease a spot or something along those lines, rather than going ahead and putting $300,000 into expanding that parking lot up there.
Excuse me for interrupting, Mark. We're working closely with Mr. Morgan and his team to find a location up there. We've contacted a few different locations right now we're working through, and if those don't work, Mr. Morgan's committed to trying to help us find additional space. So it didn't make sense to expand that parking lot, because that would have impacted using the basketball courts or other places at Magruder. So we're looking forward to resolving that soon.
Then I'm going to drop down to Mount Vernon there, HVAC replacement phase 1. You can see we've reduced the amount of cost there. We're doing a little bit different on how we're supplying fresh air to the building and the types of system we're installing in there. So we think we can reduce that project there by that much money and be fine there without a problem. The next one down that's changed is Seaford Elementary, coat the low slope roof there again. We want to go ahead and coat that roof as soon as possible to protect the roof and make it last as long as possible. The next one down there, Seaford Elementary School, expand the parking lot. You can see we've moved it forward from recommended moving it forward from FY20 to FY19 and increasing the amount. I think if you've been by the Seaford Elementary School in the morning at arrival or in the evening at dismissal, you'll recognize the need for expanded parking there to try to get all the traffic off of Seaford Road. So that's where we're recommending moving that forward. So this, the last slide here for, you can see the only change on this slide here is for Yorktown Elementary School, and it's expanding the parking lot and bus loop. And that's the same consideration there at that school. If you go down Siege Lane in the morning or late in the early afternoon, you'll see why we need to expand that parking lot and get the traffic off of Siege Lane. So the next set of schools I'll touch on is the middle schools. And there's not a whole lot of changes here except for Tab Middle School. You'll see there about three lines down, replacing the shingled roof again. You can see the difference in the cost there in FY19. We had $1.35 million, and that's been increased to $2.1 million in FY18. So we're moving the money from Coventry to Tab Middle School for this roof. Now that does not mean we have the money now. We're going to have the money to start the design. So we won't be able to replace the roof yet. We have to do the design first. As I move down there, you see Tab Middle School cafeteria and gym expansion. In FY23, we've inserted a project there for $2.2 million. The cafeteria there is far too small for that school, and we have some ideas about how to expand that. We want to implement those, or try to implement those. And also we have some ideas for expanding the gyms there, and also with to combine that with the locker room renovations at that school. We'd like to see if we can update the facilities there, and that's why we placed that recommending placing that in FY23. Then the last line there, you see the Yorktown Middle School. We're recommending replacing the gym floor in that school in FY20.
One question on the Tab Middle, there's two gyms there, so one is a full-size gym, the other one's, I guess you would consider it a half-size, or is that what you're talking about, maybe expanding that gym to make it another full-size?
When we looked at the gyms, both of them are not full-size.
They're not, okay.
They don't have regulation-sized courts and everything in them. So the plan is to see if we can go ahead and make one of those a full-size gym. The other one would probably have to be just an auxiliary gymnasium, but we want to move forward, getting some designs, getting some architects involved with trying to figure out how we can update those facilities.
And potentially move the stage out of the cafeteria and pairing that on one of those areas so that you can increase the capacity of the cafeteria tab.
Okay. Yeah, I know when I did my tours through the schools, that was one school that seemed to have some space issues just in that area, I know. So excellent, good idea, thank you.
And then the next project, the next slide is on Grafton Complex. You see we have a couple things here. I want to let you, so FY18, that's the first column. That's the column that we're already working in. That's our current fiscal year. You notice the second line there, we have $3.5 million for replacing the HVAC in the high school. So the way that system is set up, the high school and the middle school have one central heating and air conditioning plant. So all the boilers and all the cooling towers and all the pumps are in the middle of the school. So part of the plan for this renovation here, this HVAC replacement here, is to go ahead and replace all that equipment when we do the high school portion of the building. So that'll all be done when we get to the middle school portion. So then if you go back to the first line there, you'll see a dramatic drop in the cost. I had $2.98 million in there, and I dropped it to $625,000. And that's part of that is that reason, and part of that, the other reason is we're planning to reuse the piping that's in the building. Much like Yorktown Elementary this summer, we found that the piping, the heating and air conditioning piping is in very good condition. We've maintained water chemistry in the pipes like we're supposed to, and so the equipment in the pipe is in very good shape. We'll reuse the piping there and just have to change out the HVAC equipment, heat pumps and things like that. So that's why the dramatic drop in the cost there. Then go down to the second from the bottom line there, you see Grafton Complex repaving the parking lot, moving that out to from FY21 to FY22, recommending that, and an increase there. We've added parking lot space to that building, and so we're going to need to repave that too, so that's why the increase there. Replacing the auxiliary gym floors, the last line, you see we have a slight increase there, $5,000 there. We'd like to go ahead when we're in there, replace that rubber floor and also replace the pads along the walls there at the same time. So we'd like to do that all at the same time, all together. Then the last few slides here, or the next slides will be for the high schools. You see down here, we have Bruton High School about in the middle of the screen for FY23 for $2 million. and this will be to expand the auxiliary gym there and their facilities there in FY23 for $2 million. The next one down is Tab High School, replacing the fire alarm system, and we have a slight increase there, replacing the fire alarm system there. We noticed some cost increases or cost increases, I want to say that, at Yorktown when we did that this last summer, so we expect some minor cost increases there at Tab High as well. The next slide, Tab High School. At the top, replacing heating and air conditioning controls. Again, this is the decrease there is due to the fact that we're going to try to reuse the piping that's already in place, so that we have a minor a decrease there. Then you notice that we're recommending moving the Tab High, renovating the restrooms forward from FY22 to FY20. And they're in need because those are the original fixtures in some of the restrooms there and original partitions in some of the restrooms. So we definitely need to do some work in that building, in those areas. The next one down is changed. It's York High School. Now you notice a major increase there. This is replacing and coating the low slope roof. This is on the whole entire building. Our roof consultant has been doing research on the building. They've done some infrared scans of the roof to determine if the roof is wet or dry, and they have found a lot of areas where their water has seeped into the insulation that's under the roof, so there has been some minor roof leaks. It's not gotten into the classrooms, but it's in the insulation layers on the roof, and because of that, we need to increase that amount there. Then the next one down, you see York High School, again, replacing the low slope roof. Phase 2, which was originally in FY20, we're going to recommend moving that forward to 19 as well, because once we get the contractor mobilized, we want to go ahead and keep him mobilized rather than paying for him to come back and start over again. But we also had to increase that dramatically there. You see, went from $415,000 to $1.5 million. And again, that's because of the wet insulation in the roof. And unfortunately, the wet insulation is right along the edges of the roof, which means we had to take off the gutters and take off the downspouts and take off the metal trim at the edge of the building. So we had to affect a lot of stuff just to get this wet insulation out of the roof. Then we have the York High School Annex, replacing the doors, windows, HVAC, lighting, and ceilings. This area of York High School was not renovated during when York High School was renovated. It has some of the original windows. It has original doors. So this portion of the building is in pretty dire straits for getting renovated. HVAC, lighting, and ceilings are also very old. The lighting, I think, is T12 lighting still in some of the places there. So it's very high energy consumption for the lighting there. Then last one there on that page, that slide is York High School create a bus parking lot loop, create a bus parking loop and expand the parking, and we inserted that. I would like to insert that in FY22, and that's to give the buses someplace to park and also give us additional parking for Bailey Field there at the school. Okay, other projects. So we have here, you see this fourth one down there, the various schools' hot water system upgrades. You can see we were recommending moving that back from FY21 to FY22, and it's in order for us to get some other projects done. Bailey Field, replacing the synthetic turf. The manufacturer's recommendations say we can wait till 23, but there are some needs there for that field, and we want to go ahead and move that forward to FY22, so bring it a year forward. You can see down there then, third from the last line, all school division buildings, a fiber optic network. We're recommending moving that from FY23 to FY24, and a decrease from $5 million to $4 million. Let's see, the last line then is a new school, and this is a major reason why some of this shifting took place on this FMP, is because we're recommending moving the school back from FY19 to 20 and from 20 to 21. You can see down here at the very bottom of this slide.
Thank you. Mr. Manford, if I may share, when we look at what we see at Yorktown Elementary this year in Magruder, we're not seeing the enrollment pressure that we saw in previous years. As you know, when I shared the numbers about the schools being over and the numbers we have in the chart, there's not much distance between the instructional capacity and the percent above the instructional capacity. So we're not seeing enrollment pressure, and there's a lot of uncertainty about the pace of development. Some of those projects have not even been gone through the plan approval process. So we still have quite a bit of information that we'll need it to effectively plan the start date for construction of that school, because we're not really seeing the enrollment pressure that we've seen in previous years.
Well, I mean, the last thing we want to do is open a school and not have enrollment where it needs to be after spending quite a few millions of dollars to do so.
Yes.
And to staff it. But I would just ask that we keep it on the radar, keep that communication, connectivity with the county and through these projects that all of a sudden we see a burst of an acceleration of construction, then we come back and do what we have to do to get things going.
Okay, so then I'll go to the last slide here. So you can see the totals. So you can see the top line there is what the FY18E there was the funding that was provided by the Board of Supervisors last year, the $9 million there. And those are the figures that we had provided last year in our FMP to the county, or SCIP to the county. And you can see the shift there in the blue right below that. Down at the bottom there. I'm sorry. We shifted from the bottom line to the second line. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. So you see the red at the bottom there. FY19 went to the FY20. The amounts, you can see it shifted there. So it shifted back 1 year, and that's how we got the funding in FY18 or FY19 to do some of these other projects. Wasn't that clear on that? As clear as I wanted to be on that. Do you have any questions for me?
I'm just curious, the parking lot expansion at York High, where are you gonna put that? Where's that going?
We have some ideas, but we don't want to, we need to get a civil engineer involved and figure out exactly how we could do it, how we could put the parking in there, the best way to put the parking in there.
There's space there, the question is
How to use it
getting the
wisely.
experts in to use it more wisely.
And it could be used for Bailey Field also?
Correct.
All righty.
All righty.
Thank you. Anybody need a break? Nope, moving on. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. All right, we have two presentations left, and they'll be, my understanding from both of these presentations are brief. So Dr. Carroll, Chief Human Resource Officer, is now going to give a report on the state of class size in comparison to the guidelines set forth in the strategic plan based on adjustments made during and since the 10-day count.
I'm going to draw myself.
Dr. Carroll.
All right, thank you, Dr. Shandor, Mr. Bedford, members of the board. In our last work session, I reported preliminary numbers and status reports on staffing. Tonight, I submit to you a strategic plan update for an objective which previously resided in Goal 2 of the strategic plan, which is now under Goal 5, efficient and effective operations. The purpose of this object is to monitor the board's commitment to smaller class sizes. And information presented tonight will reflect the status of the division as of the 10-day count of students enrolled and attending during that 10-day window. To give our elementary class sizes context, the state maximum class sizes are 24 students for kindergarten, but can be as high as 29 with a dedicated para. 30 students for grades 1 through 3 and 35 students for grades 3 through 5. The new class size objective is stated here. Staff is still working on creating strategies and processes for meeting the goals of the new strategic plan, and resources will also have to be expanded in the new budget or succeeding budgets in order to meet the new standard of at or below, as opposed to the old goal, which was to set a division average target. Therefore, this school year, staff followed the previous targets. It needs to be emphasized here that the target ratios listed are for division averages and that there will be individual school and classroom results that differ, and all ratios are dependent on multiple factors. Decisions on shifting resources to address variances are made after taking into account enrollment variance, paraeducator support, and principal and level director input. The board did not alter the secondary class size targets with the new strategic plan. The state has no class size limit for grades 7 through 12. Our division target ratio for secondary core classes is listed here at 30 students. The only exception to this limit is that English classes must average 24 students or below. And that's dictated by the state. Another point of emphasis here is that the allocation decisions are always subject to available resources. On this slide, we have the division average class sizes listed across all levels, with the division targets and state limits listed at the bottom of the slide. In elementary, we monitor individual grades as well as K through 2 and 3 through 5 averages. In middle and high, we monitor the class sizes in the different content areas. And as you can see, we're below all division targets across the board. Last year, board members asked for data on individual elementary classes. Again, this year, you'll find in your folders a supplemental listing for each class recently, as of today, at the elementary level. Please note that many of those classes also include the use of paraeducators, special education teachers, and reading specialists that also pull from those classes off frequently. We now turn to historical comparisons, and first elementary. Our start of year numbers are in line with the previous 5 years, with an actual slight dip from last year in the total average. And 4 of the 6 grades fall within the range of the previous 4 years, and all averages fall well below our target ratios. Another metric that we are diligent about monitoring are the ratios of our Title I schools versus the ones that aren't. Federal regulations require equal to lower class sizes for those classes. And as you see here, if you compare the middle column, which are the Title I class sizes, to the right column, we meet the regulated class size relationship. In middle school, you'll find the current numbers in the right column. All content areas are similar to last year, and the total average ranking falls in the middle of the range for the previous 4 years. When looking at the individual class levels, we do have 5 Algebra 1 sections that are scheduled right now at 30 to 31 students. But they were scheduled that way on purpose, and attrition is expected. It happens every year. We have 3 other Advanced 8 English classes at 30 or 31. At one of the schools, creating the additional class would take away the ability of teachers to do common planning, so the principal has requested that we do not change that. And there is one lone section of civic economics that is at 31 students, and all principals are comfortable with these numbers as long as they stay at that level. And in high school, more similarity to recent years, where all 4 content averages fall within the range of the previous 4 years, as does the total average. Additionally, in high school, we currently have only 4 class sections across the 4 schools with 30 or more students. 3 are social studies classes that have 30 or 31 in them, and we have a sole section of advanced geometry of 33, meaning that's the only section of that class at that school. So in order to break that up, you'd be talking about classes of 16 and 17. These principals and teachers are comfortable with these numbers, but reserve the right to ask for more support if more students move in mid-year. That concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions? All right, so this is based on the 10-day out count, 10-day count. So we got the numbers here. So we just are monitoring and seeing things keep changing.
Yes, we monitor monthly. We haven't looked at the end of September yet. We're going to dig into those soon, and then every month we get a report from all the schools and look at it.
All right.
All right, thank you, Dr. Carroll. Our last, I won't even call it a presentation, it's really just a brief update from Dr. James related to the attendance zone committee that he led last week.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. The Elementary Attendance Zone Balance Committee met last Thursday. The committee is comprised of 2 parent representatives who live in a school zone and have students in that school on the committee, as well as 5 principals of the school that's most likely would experience enrollment pressure, as well as central office staff, Dr. Butler, the manager of school board office, and myself also, members of the committee. Last week, we had 22 individuals present. We had a very lively discussion as we looked at the data that was shared with you by the consultant back in March, as well as during the May work session about that information. So we had a very lively discussion about that and what the data really meant and what are some of the things we need to consider, as well as a review of each attendance zone so they know geographically where each zone was located in York County. Because next week, we're going to look into all of that data and then start to make some decisions. And Dr. Aaron Butler is going to lead or facilitate what we call a SCAN discussion, which is a protocol for analyzing issues. And the first part of it, SCAN, the acronym, is C, the issue, the S. C would be to clarify the issues. A would be to assess the priorities based on the feedback that we established early on from the board about what we want to do to maintain attendance zones within the school division, and then name the next steps. So that's the work of the committee this coming week on Thursday, as well as looking for additional information that the committee requested last week that I'll provide from them on this Thursday as we move through with the next step of looking at balancing our elementary attendance zones.
Are we on schedule?
We're on schedule.
Okay.
And I'm glad you asked that question. It looks like we're on schedule, but this is the work of the committee. You know, we're scheduled to bring you a recommendation or recommendations in November. If more time is needed, of course, then I'll come back and ask for additional time. But right now, it looks like we are on schedule because there is some additional time a week after the last meeting before November 6th.
Well, I know that's why we kind of wanted to take our time and slow things down, because last year we didn't have enough time, so we want to make sure we don't end up in that same, folks, we're out of time again, that kind of thing.
I think worst case scenario, if it is delayed a little bit for information and due to the committee work, then we certainly can bring you board recommendation at the December work session.
Sure.
All right, well, that concludes the presentations. Anything else?
No, our next board meeting is October 23rd.
October 23rd. Any other questions? No. Good. All right, with that, we'll conclude this evening. Good night, everyone. Meeting adjourned.